Welcome to Intro Psych Sessions, the second season, where I will rethink my entire Intro Psych course from beginning to end, asking friends and experts to help me figure out how to put it together in a way that implements recommendations and integrates the skills and knowledge that I want to give to my students. And who better to join me on this adventure, co-hosting the series with me, than Dr. Regan A.R. Gurung. This is Intro Psych Sessions Season 2, and I hope that these conversations will help you as you think about your students and your own intro course. Let's get to it. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Endless distractions, overbooked schedules, information overload. Students face so many barriers to being fully engaged with their schoolwork. That's why Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology gives you the tools you need to keep them focused on your course, before, during, and after class. Whether it's the exclusive author-created content, captivating footage in our Introductory Psychology video collection, or the self-evaluation of our goal-setting and reflection surveys, Achieve helps students stay focused on the course and makes it easy for them to tell you when they need extra help. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions 2023 special for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
It is my pleasure to be here with my co-host Regan Gurung and Jasmine Mena from Bucknell University. Jasmine, thank you. I think we're becoming friends, so now you're doing things as a favor to me. I love it.
You have a lot of confidence in me. Be careful.
Social currency. It's great. I love it. And you all just met each other for the first time. Regan, you would have met her if you were at ACT, right?
I would have, indeed.
Yeah. And although ACT is a blur, there's so many people there, right? And you get like 2 meals out with people, and then it's like time to go home. So I don't know how much meaningful interaction you can have with folks. But anyway, thanks for doing this. Jasmine, the backstory is that I'm redoing my intro psych course. I am rethinking everything that I've learned in the last 10 years, and I'm trying to figure out how it all fits. And Regan and Jasmine, I know that you have both read a lot and wrote a lot about inclusive teaching. Jasmine, about teaching intro psych with diversity in mind. And I got to say, I've been having some of these conversations. I have some limitations by my background and just my privilege and all of those things. And so I want to do a good job with this course. And here's the main issue that I'd like to talk about for the next 25 minutes. Teaching my students the IPI outcomes for intro psych. Okay, that is those outcomes are obviously the center of the course. And there's a diversity outcome in there. Great. There's that. There's also personally what I love to teach, the things I love to teach on, the things I love to spend time on that I want to do with my students. There is inclusive teaching strategies and things to do and integrate. There is these other very valuable peripheral things. By the way, I've been thinking about this a lot so there's all these other things too. There is, I think about, what Aaron Richmond, who we'll talk to, suggests about metacognition and making sure students have opportunities to do that. There is teaching students how to learn. There was a time where I just spent my first 2 weeks with students not talking about research methods or anything or science of psychology to start the term. I just taught them how to study. And that's 2 weeks. That's 20% of my course. My course, by the way, 11 weeks long in a quarter system. There are all these peripheral, valuable things that are not maybe at the core of introductory to psychology, but I want to bring them all in, and I just can't. And it's a bit overwhelming. And So now I'm going to
it's just not possible.
Right. So Jasmine, how important is it that I bring more inclusion and diversity into my intro psych course?
Well, and how do you do it, right?
With that, in 20 minutes or less. I think it's important because it makes for a better science and makes for a better practice. I think it's truncated and fragmented and inaccurate if we do not do it. There isn't one way. So already you're off the hook. There isn't just one way to do it. And we can make changes over time. But I think it's important to send a message to students that they as individuals belong in your class and in the field. And I think that the most powerful way to do that is through the content, through the work. Of course, attending to process elements that makes everyone feel welcomed in your classroom. But if they can see that the material is relevant to diverse people, which it is, it could be through examples and through exercises, through different scholars. It could even be through the application of what some people would call mainstream psychological constructs to new problems. That's possible. I, for example, love learning theory and teaching about classical conditioning and applying it to media, and how the more you see specifically Black faces as crimes, right, as criminals in the media, the more people make these associations. So it's the same psychological knowledge, but applied to content that hopefully will create a better world.
Well, that was a very nice opening, by the way. That was very, very helpful. I think I'm going to throw to Regan here, but one of the things that just really resonates with me is how the idea of applying classical conditioning to Black faces on media, it may not occur to the instructor who's teaching introductory psychology out of a textbook, where there is no example like that given in the book. And so it might never occur to somebody to say, oh, classical conditioning can be connected to race here or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I learned that. One of my colleagues, Kevin Myers, I learned that from him. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a great example of taking content that's normally so, regimented by the book, and then really going and bring it into a contemporary way. Along those lines, though, Jasmine, and I think, do you have a favorite set piece that really drives the part that this home? Because I'll give you an example. I actually spend the first day of class talking about how backgrounds influence perceptions, right? Mm-hmm. And I actually talk about me growing up in Bombay, and then I even bring it into psychology and say even our different areas of psychology influence how we pick what we're going to talk about in intro, right? But even that over the years I found wasn't enough, and so right early on, and you could say I maybe it's heavy-handed, but I spend a good 10 minutes on exclusively the issues in psychology today. For example, publication biases, and there's some great data that came out in 2020 and 2021 about how, the number of editors of journals are white and not of color. There's all that great data. So, and then I even, sadly, we all love, after George Floyd, STP put out this, the Society for the Teaching of Psych put out this great comment about how we've neglected things. And they brought up the fact that in the 75 or 70 plus year history, there have been a handful of non-white presidents, So, and I talk about all of this in one big shot, first or second week of class, to really drive this point home that, even the rat was white, as it were, right? And things like that. So is there something that you really lean a lot on to get the point across, other than weaving it through the whole term, in addition to, I should say?
Yes, there is something. This might not be exactly like a content-based, but it's a process-based activity. And that has to do with, often we have students engage in discussions and they talk about different topics, but there are two things I try to emphasize. One is that learning how to interact with other people with cultural humility, and to have effective group dialogue. That's not something that's innate. We have to learn that. And so I do spend a good amount of time at the beginning of the semester teaching this system, this collaborative competencies system that I learned from a friend and colleague called CREATE. And so through that, I explained to them what it means to engage in difficult dialogues. Well, how do we even know when that is happening? What does it mean to be an effective discussant, and considering that we all come from these different backgrounds, so how might we attend to those things? And there are 6 different competencies, and we go through them and I give them examples. And then for the rest of the semester, when we have discussions, I might say, okay, today, focus on verbal equity, evaluate yourself in the group and attend to your process when you're doing that. And then in the end, they can talk about, yes, we talked about the content of the course, but how did we talk about it? Did we talk about it in a way where no one dominated the conversation, or we used the resources of every single member of the group? And so there are 5 other ones that are incredibly important to process, to how we communicate. And so I find that it's time well spent, because it will result, I hope, in deeper, more meaningful discussions, and they will take that skill, hopefully, with them to subsequent courses. So
that's called CREATE, and that's like anybody can find that and use it as a model?
Yes. Okay. In fact, Marcela Borge, 2017, who's at Penn State. And okay. I can give you some more resources. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are your favorite resources since we're here right now? Do you have any others off the top of your head that you just really like?
Favorite resources.
We can come back to it as they come up organically too. So, okay. No, that's fine. So, I'm seeing you kind of scan your mind for what those are. So, okay. I didn't just cut off Jasmine. I promise. So I am. Okay, so this is one of the things I'm talking about. Your example for classical conditioning is something I'm already doing. And so to me, if I want to pay attention and value this, I can just be intentional about changing some examples or being creative about how I address those things with students. Now, the CREATE, what would you call it? Model? System? Skill?
Yeah, system.
Okay. The
collaborative competencies, but that's a mouthful.
Sure. But this CREATE system, I love it. It fits. People might say, well, that doesn't sound like psychology. And I would say it is, it does. Absolutely. It's communication and all that. But it also is one of those skills, psychological skills, the skillful psychology student needs to be able to communicate in these kinds of ways. And I think we started with bias, when our biases get in the way, we're not having as effective communication results as we could be otherwise. And so to have an evidence-based way that values and is diversity and is inclusive, it's great. Now here's my pushback. I don't know how. Here's my pushback. It's a question. What are you not doing in your class to make room for that? That's because that is.
I am lecturing less.
Mm-hmm.
So what this means is that every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, there is a whole class dedicated to discussion of the theme of the week. So they've had extensive homework to reflect on the ideas, comprehension questions they've had to answer individually. Then they have to come together as a group to incorporate their understanding to new problems. So I'm presenting them with some new problems that they need to resolve. And oftentimes to increase accountability, they might might have to put together like a single slide or a report back of some sort so that they can talk to others how they solve this problem. I mean, there have been times where one of the questions is to interpret a graph that was in the reading. It sounds small, but that is often something that is missed. And so they're supposed to work effectively as a group using the collaborative competencies to use all of the group resources in order to be able to explain this result. I mean, without fail, it's in the reading, it's explained, but it is difficult to learn the skill of interpreting graphics.
So just for the context for our listeners, Jasmine, how large is your intro class?
35 students.
Okay, so it's right. So 35 students, and because I think that so often influences the dynamics and the structure of how we think about things. So I just want to remind myself of that. But with Garth, that's such a key point, right? Is what are you giving up, right? And I think far too often we think about giving up content without realizing that we've been shackled to content for too long, and really getting those themes out and the skills out. I mean, I love that graphical interpret a stats table or a graph, because I mean that's real practice, right? Where even in a social media piece, if something comes out, you need to do that. So that brings something that Garth and I have been talking about or thinking about a lot, especially in this context of how he's restructuring, is the assessment component, right? How do you know that they're getting some of these things? Have Garth has dreamed up some pretty funky assessments. Garth, do you want to mention your 5-part?
I think the one, well, let me just tell you. So I have this 5-part end of week assessment that is basically the first one is content. So improve your life with psychology. I think this is a very nice opportunity to bring in this theme of diversity, inclusion, like how you just have to be a little creative out of the book instead of out of the box, right? But you got to think outside of the book for that. Which is, I know that there are very good authors out there, by the way, and very good publishers who want to do right on this topic. And I think it will take time, but more organically, we will see more of these kinds of, and we probably are already seeing some of these examples in textbooks applied correctly and more interestingly and relevantly to intro psych content. Okay, so that's the first one, is just apply it to your life, okay, or to the world around you. The second one's a critical thinking one, which is, these are based, by the way, in the APA, IPI outcomes. But the second one is a critical thinking one, which is solve a problem with psychology. Again, that's an opportunity to kind of bring something like this value in. Then we have psychology's themes, which does hit on, one of those themes is diversity related, social justice related. And you and I have talked a lot about that, and I think we've recorded those. So people should go listen to Jasmine's interview on Psych Sessions if you want more of this. And then here's what I like, and I'd like you to maybe just riff on this for a second, Jasmine, is the skills. The APA put out a document called the Skillful Psychology Student, and I love it. And how do you communicate to your students that what they're learning here related to diversity or communication with each other is a skill? How are you letting them know that? And then how are you assessing it, maybe, too?
Yeah. Well, do you have another hour?
Yeah, we do. We have 10 minutes. What can you do?
All right. So I try as much as possible to impress upon students over and over again that they're in this class not for me, that it's absolutely for them. So part of it, I think, is messaging. And I try to focus on the idea of laboring to learn and the idea of what is a labor that you would want to do if you really wanted to learn something, and trying to encourage that type of attitude as opposed to laboring to get the grade. Now, of course, you've got to put some work in to labor to learn and to get a good grade. So it's not to minimize the getting the grade, but trying to impress upon them that they're going to leave my class. And so if they can leave my class with a certain set of values and a commitment to personal reflection so that they can assess how they're growing, that's more important to me than the grade they earn in my class. So I do use, I have been working with and tweaking a labor-based grading approach, if you've heard of that. And in that approach, there's a big emphasis on students becoming really the drivers of their learning. And I will give them assignments, and the assignments will earn them points. But more often than not, the assignment is separated, well, always actually is separated from the feedback. So if they go through the motions, they will get the full credit. And I know that feels very uncomfortable sometimes, but if they go through the motions, they're going to get credit. Then they'll get the feedback. And so that they are learning and growing from the feedback that they receive. It can be a little bit destabilizing for instructor and student to think that they're going to get a grade if they got something wrong. And if they did, how do they know if they got it right? So the idea is that they are engaging in repetition. They're repeating. They're trying to retrieve the information in different ways. So one way would be to complete homework assignments. Then they're going to repeat this by doing some multiple choice questions. They're going to repeat this by discussing the content in a group discussion. And so there are many opportunities to retrieve the information in different ways. I'm really pleased with this approach. More research is necessary on this approach, but I think it still has the elements that at least I try to apply it with the elements of just cognitive science and learning scientists and what they think helps people to learn.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So you take these particular skills that you're doing in your class related to probably many things, but one of the things is diversity, inclusion, and you're doing all the good learning stuff. You're giving them multiple opportunities to learn through this labor-based grading. You are assessing those multiple opportunities and giving feedback along the way.
Yeah. And what I actually didn't mention was the core of your question is the point of equity. And that is that traditional grading systems oftentimes reward greater economic advantage and prior experiences to support that. It's just kind of like by design. And so if you get students coming from different walks of life, both are motivated. The one that comes from a more privileged background will almost always, do better in some things because of that background, but it will crush the motivation of the student that is absolutely invested and wants to learn, but might need some additional feedback or support, and will get there. And so that's an equity issue for me. Okay.
So Regan, again, I'm going to toss you in a second, but here, Jasmine, I have heard you talk in this 20 minutes about belonging. That's how you started with, that a student belongs. You've talked about the skills you're giving them related to DEI content and putting particular content and examples into the course. How you use your class time related to the topic. And then finally, just your grading and assessment system, trying to make it more equitable. It's so infused. I know this is your area. And it's something that you're really passionate about, you care about too, that it's so infused in what you do. I hope to get there. In the last, I need to think, Regan, I need a chance to think, so I need you to jump in, but I want to think about what I'm actually going to do, what I'm doing, planning to do, and what I can do in my course. And so go ahead, Regan.
So, so maybe one thing that would be interesting to hear, Jasmine, is how did you see yourself evolve into this? Did it take a long time? Was there a watershed moment where you were like, I'm not doing it this old way? Or, because, as Garth said, you've nicely integrated so many different elements into things. And I think a lot of what you say isn't necessarily in many pedagogical toolbooks,
I don't know. My goodness, how did I get here? I don't think that there was a single watershed moment, but I would say that over time, I just enjoyed my classes better. I just really had more fun and felt like it was meaningful to me personally. So maybe this is a personal project more than anything else, and maybe it could be useful to other people. I'm not sure. But it just feels good to me to know that I'm really giving it trying. And the other thing too is that I guess I'm not afraid of trying new things, and I have failed a lot. There are a lot of things that haven't worked out well, and over time, I've learned from colleagues too that are doing great things, and bit by bit, I've been adjusting and implementing. And frankly, I've not arrived. I have not arrived at all. There are plenty of things that I am not sure if they're working as well. This is what I'm doing now. If you want to talk to me in another 6 months or a year, I might say some different things.
Yeah. Well, I love that you said it's personal. As I've been thinking more about the Intro Psych course, particularly in the last year, one of the things that I've been sharing with folks is that there is no right way to teach this course. It is very personal. You have to go with your expertise and your passion and your interest. That's what is transformative in the course. Yes, it has some transformative aspects just by nature of the content, but how you deal with that content and those skills with students is really, really the key. Now, that doesn't mean, and by the way, here's another thought. The listener who's listening to this and saying, yeah, Garth, I'm with you. I'm struggling. I'm really trying to do right by my students and trying to increase my attention to these kinds of topics. Let's just celebrate that. This is what I'm hearing you say, Jasmine, too, is that you're on the journey. We're on the journey, right? You're testing labor-based grading as a possible, next step, right? And so I think we all are. Now, here's as we kind of finish up here, here's what I'm thinking in my course. I have gone through and tagged content in my course to that theme, that social justice theme. And so I know that there's going to be multiple times in the course where I'm going to explicitly focus on that. And I'm going to have to work on how that all gets said and packaged and all that. So that's sort of the content piece. The piece that I am going to want to work on is the belonging piece. I don't think I have the tools. Even Regan, what you were saying on day one, Regan, this could be a series in and of itself. Is day one intro psych?
Yes.
Like, what do students need to get hooked into this course? What are the most the best things that we can give them on that first day? So this is my day one, setting the stage with syllabus and then also just time together of belonging. That has to be really intentional. Of course, it's got to go on beyond there, but I'm thinking about day one right now. So any feedback about that?
I suppose that one message that I start with, and it happens throughout, is that they're not that they receive the syllabus and we talk about it, all the amazing things that we'll be discussing. But then I really point out to them that all of this preparation they're going to do is not for them, and sometimes it creates a little surprise. And if it's not for me, who is it for? Look around; it's for everybody else that's here as well. So when you prepare, you're not just thinking of yourself and your own intellectual development. You're thinking about what can you offer your neighbor here, your colleague today. And so trying as much as I can to shift the perspective from that individualistic kind of self kind of growth perspective to a community-oriented learning. Sometimes, not for Intro Psych, I don't think I've done this recently, but for other courses, if there is going to be a chance for extra credit or just anything like that, it has to be something that helps the community. And so they have to figure out what is it going to be that is not just for self, but the only way you'll get something extra is if you give. And so that would be a message.
Well, you just opened up a whole other can that I hadn't even thought about yet. I should have been, but and that is what is baked into kind of our individualistic way of doing things, and how can we turn that outward? I do think it's in the outcomes, right? It's in the applying psychology to your life and to your community and the world, and applying it in positive ways. And we could really focus in on the, the community and world stuff. That would be good. Jasmine, thanks for sitting down with us for a little bit. You really did contribute this valuable, very valuable piece to this conversation. And I asked you to do this because I need the help, like so many of us do. So anyway, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Okay, and we're good. So how was that? All right?
Yeah. No, I just really, I would have said this, but I'm sure that there wasn't enough time, but I really admire that you are willing to share your process because it normalizes it for the rest of us. So thank you.
Good. Yeah. Well, you'll see how bad a teacher I am. So
no, that's what makes you good.
Well, have a great day and really nice to see you. I'll see you in January.
Yeah, see you then. It was nice meeting you as well, Regan.